Morning.
Morning.
Let me get situated here. So I wanted to start by having you guys ask yourselves, has there ever been a time in your life where you were in conversation with someone, okay? And because of this, you were conversing with them, and they said something to you that, it just struck wrong with you, okay? As soon as they said, you're like, man, that's not right. Spiritually speaking, morally speaking, you said that's not how it should be. But because of the social structure you're in, or the environment, or maybe there's a power dynamic, or whatever the reason, you decide not to say anything to that person, okay? Maybe you were filled with God's Spirit, and you thought, maybe, well, I could share with this person, whether it's about my own testimony, or maybe a little bit about the Bible, just some kindness, okay? But it's a little uncomfortable, a little awkward, so you say, oh, maybe next time, okay? Well, there's a story in the Bible, the book of Jonah, that touches on that topic pretty well, and that's where I'm going to be reading from today, okay? From chapters 1 to 4. But to give you a little bit of preface of what's going on in the story, okay, Jonah's a prophet, okay? He's one of the 12 minor prophets at the end of the Old Testament. This is like 800 BC or so. And prophets, their job were to take God's message and give it to the Israelite people, right? They were kind of like preachers, pretty high religious leaders of sorts. So this wasn't his first time having to give out a message or something, okay? But it starts out in chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh. Preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me." Now, doing a little bit of research, I see that Jonah is a Hebrew word, and Jonah translates to dove. Okay, dove, birds fly. Now, his father, Amittai, will that translate to truth. So the dove is going to fly from truth. And that really describes what this entire story is about here. Because Jonah, what happens next is Jonah says, it says Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. You see, Jonah says he's not going to listen to the Lord on this one. He hates Ninevites. Ninevites were, they were the capital of Assyria, okay? And Assyria is a country that fought with Israel a lot at this time. And they were warlike, they were barbaric, they were destructive. So there was a little bit of racism of sorts towards them. So much so that he didn't say, maybe next time, Lord, I'm a little uncomfortable. No, he actually got up, left Israel, got on a boat, and headed for Tarshish. And Tarshish is modern-day Spain, okay? So he went from Israel, which is west of Nineveh. He goes even further west, as far west as he could possibly go. They didn't know about North America at this time, okay? So he went as far west on the earth as he thought he could go to get away from this. And when I read that, I thought, man, it's been a couple of thousand years of these Israelites, not listening to the Lord and something bad happening to them. Why can't they get this through their head? Just do what you're told. But I thought about it a little bit, and I thought, if someone asked me to go to Iraq, which is where Assyria is at this time, and go to the darkest, most dangerous depths of Iraq and have to go preach against it, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd go the opposite way. So that's what he does, and then it goes on to say that the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break apart. All the sailors were afraid. Each prayed up to their own God. They began throwing cargo into the sea to lighten the load. They started throwing their belongings off the ship. They were doing anything they could to get this boat from wrecking. Okay? Another note is these were pagans. Okay? It says they're preaching to their own gods. And modern meteorology has done lots of research, and they've noticed that there's been cyclones in the Mediterranean Sea where this is happening. Cyclones that have reached 90-mile-per-hour winds, hurricane-level storms. But this storm here, this is a supernatural storm brought on directly from God. So this is something that we can't even imagine. This is absolute destruction. But Jonah, he doesn't begin to pray. No, he goes into a deep sleep on the bottom of the boat. He's trying to hide still. So the captain goes to him. How can you sleep? Call up to your God. It says then that he answered, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who has made the sea and the land. Now this terrified the sailors, okay? This scared them. "What have you done?" they asked. But the sea began to get rougher and rougher. They asked him, "What should we do to make the seas calm down?" Jonah replies, "Pick me up. Throw me overboard." Now Jonah realizes this storm is for him, okay? He sees that God's trying to say, "Hey, wake up, You're supposed to do this, not that." And he even now so, he still thinks that he'd rather die than go help these Ninevites, okay? Because he knows that there's a storm going on right now. He's not going to land in the ocean, and he doesn't know that what happens next is he gets swallowed by a fish, right? He thinks he'd rather die than have to go save these Ninevites. So, of course, they think, boy, that's pretty extreme here. They try rowing the boat back, but the storm gets stronger and stronger, right? So then they decide, well, we got nothing better else to do. We better throw this guy over the boat. So then they cry to the Lord, "O Lord, please do not let us die for this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, O Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they take Jonah, throw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. So right there, even though Jonah didn't do what he was supposed to, God still used this opportunity to save these sailors. They're pagan sailors, calling out to all their own gods. But right here, the Lord uses Jonah, even though he's going against his will, to save these people. So what happens next is really why people, a lot of people, hear the book of Jonah. It's pretty well known, more so than just the Christians, but this is well known throughout the whole world. And many, agnostics or, people of sorts, right here is where they find the story a little bit fishy, I guess. But the Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. This is where they say, well, this is false. This is allegorical. At best, this is just Jonah using a story to describe to describe his power, to describe his compassion for people. But that's not the way we're supposed to take this. This is a non-fictional story here. Jesus, in the gospel, he says, "For so Jonah was in the belly of the fish, the Son of Man," Jesus, "will be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights." Jonah's comparing this to his own crucifixion here, okay? And he's not saying that this is, some story I heard. He's saying this is a non-fiction historical event that is just like what's going to happen to me. So that's how we're supposed to take this. We're supposed to take this as a non-fictional story here. And I was doing some reading, and so a little bit of reading on this here, and I found an article from the Yarmouth Mercury newspaper in England. It came out in 1891, okay? And the article was about a man named James Bartley. Now, James Bartley was a sailor, and he fell overboard in the Falkland Islands, where he was whale fishing with his crew. They tried to save him, but he went under the water, and they thought, oh, he's dead, okay, he's gone. Well, they're still out there on that escapade fishing, and 2 days later, they harpoon a narwhal. They bring it onto the ship, begin to gut it, butcher it, and they get to the stomach, and they cut open the stomach, and there's James Bartley, still alive. 2 days later, they think 36 hours he was inside this fish. Now, his skin was bleached white from the gastric fluids, and he did become blind from the event, but he managed to live another 18 years. On his grave, it says, James Bartley, modern man of Jonah. So this is not some non-fictional fable, okay? This is something that really happened. But as Jonah's in the fish, I ask myself, well, why? Why did God put Jonah in the fish, right? Well, he did it really to save Jonah from himself, okay? Because Jonah was ready to die for this. He was going to kill myself. I don't care. I hate these Ninevites. They're bad people. I'm not going to listen. So the Lord actually sends a storm to wake him up. Hey, you can't go there. And then he says, I'm going to jump off the boat, okay? The Lord sends a giant fish to swallow him. Why? Well, he does that so that it's just Jonah and the Lord now inside this fish. Jonah can't go anywhere. He has to have time to pray, to meditate, to think about his actions. And that's what he's doing. He's giving Jonah another chance, just like he's given the Ninevites here. There's kind of like a similarity between the two as the story goes along. So, that's what Jonah does. He takes time, he thinks about it, and he prays. In my distress, I call to the Lord. And he answered me, from the depths of the grave I have called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the deep, into the very heart of the seas. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. And that's when Jonah realizes, he's not going to be able to live this life on his own, right? He's not going to survive. And there's a connection that we can make to our lives today, is when there's a storm in your life, just like a storm from Jonah's, you're not going to be able to survive on your own. But if you lean on God, you let him take the blunt of it, well, you'll manage to survive. It says in, let's see, where did I write it? In Matthew 19:26, the people speaking to Jesus, they said, we can't handle this. But Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. It said that you're supposed to have, with just the faith of a mustard seed, you're supposed to be able to move a mountain. And that's to make you believe that, with faith, you can do anything. With God's faith, anything in your life that he throws at you, you'll be able to handle, as long as you go through him. So after Jonah prays this, the Lord has the fish spit him back up onto land, onto the shores of Nineveh. Okay. Now Jonah, it says, I guess I got to do this. So the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, go to the great city of Nineveh. Proclaim the message I have given. Jonah obeys. Jonah started into the city and he proclaimed, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overturned. The Ninevites believed God. They declared a fast. All of them, from greatest to least, put on sackcloths. Now that's not the only thing he said. It says that he spoke to them for 3 days. But that's the generalization of his preaching. If you don't change your ways, God's going to destroy you. And they believed him. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from the throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself in sackcloth, and sat down in the ashes. Then he issued a proclamation in Nineveh. By the decree of the king, do not let any man or beast, herd or flock, taste anything. Do not let them eat. But let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent with and show us compassion. Now when they did this, that's exactly what God did. It says, when God saw what they did, how they turned from their evil ways, he grew compassionate. He did not bring upon the destruction he had threatened. And right there, I'm like, man, that's a good, solid story here, that everything's happened. But Jonah's still not happy. He still don't like these Ninevite people. So he starts complaining to the Lord. This is what I expect. I assumed that you were compassionate and you would do this. This is why I tried to run away. And this is when the Lord goes into it and he tries to explain to Jonah. Just because these people are barbaric, they're vicious to your people, they're still my people. Okay? Everyone deserves to be saved. Whether it's you, a prophet, whether it's a barbaric monster like the Ninevites, whether it's like people today, they all deserve my mercy. It's not bought. It's not demanded through improvement. No, it's freely given by God. And that's what God tries to explain to Jonah. And then in 1 Timothy verses 15, Paul says, this is a quote from Paul, he says, Jesus came into this world to save sinners, of whom I am the worst. But for that very reason, I was shown mercy. And, it's pretty clear that Paul was not the worst sinner. You look at the Ninevites, and they slaughtered millions of people. They were barbaric. They were savages. They did awful things. Clearly, Paul is not as bad as they are. But that's not what Paul is saying here. You're not supposed to compare yourself from one to the other. Right? You're not supposed to say, I'm better than that guy, or I'm worse than that guy. When you're talking about your own sins, like Paul does, you're talking with you and the Lord. He's judging you. You're not judging others. You're supposed to look at yourself from within. And that's the point that God tries to get across to Jonah. But in the end, it's sad to say he never did. Jonah was, I guess, a hard nut to crack. In the end, he just kind of, I think it says he gets depressed, and that's the end of the story. But that's not the way we're supposed to take it. We're supposed to realize that with God's faith, with God's mercy, with His grace, we're supposed to handle any storm that comes upon us, whether it be an actual storm, whether it be a difficulty in our lives, whether it be being swallowed by a great fish. All this is nothing that we can't do without the Lord. And that's where I guess I want to end today. I'll end in a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for giving us your grace, your mercy, your blessing. Thank you for being there when there's a storm in our lives. When there's something that's too hard for us to handle, Lord, you're there to do it for us. You're there to do it with us, Lord. Please, Lord, open our minds, open our hearts. Fill us with your Holy Spirit, Lord. Open our ears that we may hear your call when you call upon us, that we may do your bidding. Help us, Lord, to not judge so quickly, but to show mercy as you've shown mercy to us. I ask these things, all in your holy name. Amen. Thank you.